Boston police officer John O'Keefe lies unresponsive in the snow. His girlfriend, Karen Reed, is hysterical, reportedly crying out, "I hit him! I hit him!" It's the haunting moment that launched one of Massachusetts's most controversial murder cases. Now, over 3 years and a mistrial later, Karen faces a high-stakes retrial.
And they say they are here on verdict watch for as long as it takes.
Right now at 6, the second Karen Reed murder trial set to begin just 2 days from now.
Was John O'Keefe the tragic victim of a drunk driving accident? Or, as the defense claims, did a deadly secret lurk inside that house on Fairview Road? The stage is set for a courtroom showdown that promises to unravel new truths beneath the snow. This is everything we know so far about the Karen Reed retrial. Presiding over the retrial is Judge Beverly Cannone, who is firm on procedure and intentional about keeping social media noise outside her courtroom. On the state's team is Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan, a veteran homicide lawyer who now leads the case, with ADA Adam Lally assisting on the record. They surmise that hard data and forensics prove Karen Reed's Lexus struck John O'Keefe. Opposed to this theory is the defense team. Alan Jackson, a seasoned Los Angeles trial lawyer who handles the narrative and jury connection, and Bob Alessi, a Boston-based defense attorney who focuses on technical cross-examination and police procedure flaws. Together, they argue the investigation was biased and that evidence points back to events inside 34 Fairview Road, not to Reed's SUV. With jurors sworn, Judge Cannone invites counsel to begin with opening statements, two sharply different stories of what happened on that fateful January night. Special Prosecutor Brennan wasted no time painting Karen Reed as a guilty woman. In a dramatic opening statement, Brennan described how a night of bar hopping turned deadly. He claimed Karen and John argued in her Lexus. Then, she waited until he got out and slammed on the gas, striking O'Keefe in a burst of rage.
The defendant and Mr. O'Keefe were in front of 34 Fairview Road, all the way to the left side in a dark corner near a flagpole. You were aware that Mr. O'Keefe got out of the car. He got out and he stood by the side of the road after an argument with the defendant. That argument, that anger fueled by heavy intoxication, you will learn from the science and data as he stood by the side of the road, the defendant in her SUV drove away. She drove at least 35 feet away. The argument was over. It had ended. Then she stopped. She stopped, she put the Lexus into neutral, and she waited years. And the facts and the science and data will tell you that despite the fact the argument was over, she then put the Lexus into reverse, put her foot on the gas pedal, and began to press, not 25%, not 50%, up to 75% acceleration. There was a light dusting of snow, the Lexus tires spun backwards, she went backwards at least 70 feet, she clipped John O'Keefe, he fell backwards, hit his head, broke his skull, and there he lay at the corner of Fairview Road, on the ground, lying on top of his cell phone, alone. And then the defendant will later tell that when she left, he didn't look mortally wounded. Yet he was. And she simply drove away.
On the other side, defense attorney Alan Jackson offered a starkly different story, one of innocence and an investigation riddled in corruption. Judge Cannone had barred Jackson from directly naming alternate culprits in opening, so he leaned on a simple refrain.
John O'Keefe did not die from being hit by a vehicle, period. The facts will show that. The evidence will show that. The data will show that. The science will show that. And the experts will tell you that. How does Karen Reed end up sitting in that chair on trial for something, for an event that literally never happened? Well, the evidence is going to explain it. And it can be summed up in the following text message at the very beginning of this investigation. A text message of a now fired Massachusetts State Police officer named Michael Proctor. He was the lead investigator on this case, and he was talking about a fellow officer, a fellow cop, who owned the property where John O'Keefe's body was found. Text message with a buddy. Question, is the homeowner going to catch any shit? Answer, nope. He's a Boston cop too. That quote defines the lack of integrity of the Commonwealth's entire case, its entire investigation, and this prosecution. The data, the science, the witnesses will all unequivocally establish that John O'Keefe went into the Albert home that night. When he didn't come back out, you'll learn that Karen grew increasingly frustrated. She got upset. She was left alone in a car, in the cold, in the middle of the night, with the car idling. John had gone into the house. She expected him to come right back out, and when he didn't, seconds turned into minutes, and minutes started to clock away. She left John a voicemail, then another voicemail, voicemail after voicemail after voicemail, text messages. But he was unresponsive. He didn't pick up a single call. He didn't respond to a single text. A renowned forensic pathologist, a medical examiner, and a professor at Brown University. She will tell you that the injury to the back of John's head, first of all, was immediately incapacitating. And that has meaning. At the moment he suffered that fatal head injury, he couldn't walk, talk, grab his phone, cry for help, nothing. He was completely incapacitated, completely unconscious from the moment he suffered that injury. You'll learn that a Google search was discovered on Jennifer McCabe's phone. A Google search that Michael Proctor and his investigators never revealed to us. But we found anyway. A Google search that was time-stamped, according to their own data, at 2:27 a.m. 5 minutes after that 2:22 a.m. call that Higgins and Albert denied having.
The battle lines were drawn. An emotional prosecution narrative of a scorned lover's accident versus an investigative thriller of conspiracy from the defense. The prosecution's star witness, Jennifer McCabe, took the stand over multiple days, and her testimony quickly became a linchpin for both sides. McCabe is the friend who invited Karen and John to that fateful after-party at her relative's house. On direct examination, she recounted a seemingly straightforward story.
At some point when you were with everybody in the celebration, did you have a chance to look outside?
Yes.
And when you looked outside, what did you see?
I saw a dark SUV out front.
Did you know whose SUV that was?
I believed it was Karen's.
What were you expecting was going to happen?
I was expecting John and Karen to come into the house.
Did they ever make it in the house?
No, they did not.
As you were waiting, were you doing anything else in addition to waiting for them to come in?
Yes, so I was sitting at the table. Someone made mention of a car out front, so I got up, went to the door, looked out, and then I would go back to the table, and where we were just all laughing, talking, playing music, just hanging out, not really thinking much about anything.
Did anything remarkable happen in the early morning hours of January 29, 2022 that changed that peaceful mood into something else?
Yes.
I want you to share with the jury the first thing that happens that changes everything.
At 4:53, my phone rings, and I look at my caller ID.
When you pick up the phone, could you hear a voice on the other end?
I heard a voice and a lot of screaming.
And the voice you heard, is that Kaylee, John's niece?
Yes.
And the screaming, was it a man or a woman screaming?
It was a woman.
How loud was that person screaming?
Very loud.
Could you make out anything that person was saying as they were screaming?
My name was screamed a lot. And then the other individual ended up getting on the phone with me.
And who was that person that was screaming in the background?
Miss Reed.
Describe her demeanor.
Miss Reed's?
Yes.
Jen! And then she's screaming that John didn't come home, She left him at the waterfall. She was hysterical. It was very hard to follow what she was saying. The plan was to get into Carrie's car and to go and look for John. I wanted to go thinking, let's go to Tom Beatty's, but Miss Reed was pretty adamant that we go to Fairview first. As we're driving down the street, I just say to Carrie, because she doesn't know where my sister lives, oh, her house is just at the bottom of the street.
Visibility still difficult?
Yes, awful.
What happens next?
We continue, driving, and we're driving slowly past, the line of, I guess, bushes and the flagpole area. And all of a sudden, Karen's screaming from the back, "There he is," or something to the effect of, "There he is, let me out."
Did you know what she was talking about?
I had no idea.
When she was yelling that, did you look out the window?
Yeah, we had our eyes peeled out the window.
Did you see anything? Nothing
but snow. It wasn't until I got very close over to them that I saw Carrie removing the snow from John's face.
McCabe testified that as firefighters approached, she heard Karen collapse to the ground, wailing, "I hit him! I hit him! I hit him!" Then came the most dramatic moment, the Google search. Jackson produced evidence that McCabe's phone had been used to search "How long to die in cold."
You indicated you wanted to see a record, Ms. McCabe. Did you see a record that indicated a Google search? Not what the contents of the Google search is, but there was a Google search.
I just saw a Celebrite record, yes.
And did you see the time of the Google search?
On that record, yes.
Is it 2:27 a.m., correct?
Yes.
Ultimately, you will agree that there was a Google search done, and now I'm going to ask about the content of "Long to Die in Cold," correct?
That was done in the morning at the request of Miss Reed.
Ms. McCabe, I didn't ask you that. I asked you a yes or no question. Did you understand my question?
Could you repeat it, please?
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Did that record indicate that there was a search at some point done, at some point, for Long to Die in Cold?
I object to recovering the record.
So was there a search on that at some point?
On that paper, was there a search that said that? Is that the question?
Let's start with that.
Yes. Yeah, there was.
Okay. And you also agree that at some point that morning, you plugged into that phone Long to Die in Cold. Is that right?
Yes, after we found John O'Keefe.
Now, you claim that was at 6:23 and at 6:24 in the morning. Two iterations of How Long to Die in the Cold. Long to Die in Cold, How Long T.I. Die in CIKD, correct?
I'm not claiming it. It's the truth. It's what happened.
You're testifying to that?
Yes, I am.
Have you and Carrie Roberts ever discussed the fact that she corroborated your statement that Karen Reed demanded that you Google hypothermia?
No.
She never told you that?
No.
Did you ever ask her that?
No.
Did you discuss your statement that Karen Reed was the one that demanded that search?
Karen Reed did ask me to do the search, yes.
Okay, that's not what I asked you. Did you and Carrie Roberts discuss that?
Yes, we've talked about that.
Are you aware that last week Carrie Roberts denied hearing that statement?
Objection.
Sustained.
Have you been told, have you been updated that last week Carrie Roberts denied ever having heard that statement?
Objection.
Sustained.
May we approach?
Indeed, Jackson had also grilled McCabe about a 2 a.m. phone call she made to her own sister that she'd omitted in earlier testimonies.
And that grand jury, you also left out the fact that you contacted your sister, correct?
There's nothing nefarious. I remembered who I called. I didn't go back and look at phone records.
I didn't say it was nefarious. Why would you use the word nefarious?
Because there's nothing about me calling my sister that is nefarious, and I feel like you're insinuating it might be.
As the cross-examination wore on, McCabe grew combative. The truth, as always, lies somewhere in between. But one thing was clear. Jen McCabe's credibility would make or break the case for both sides. Next on the stand came Katie McLaughlin, a Canton firefighter paramedic who responded to the 911 call. McLaughlin's testimony bolstered the prosecution's account of Karen's outburst.
I asked if there had been any significant trauma that happened that preceded this, and she answered with a series of statements that she repeated. I hit him. I hit him. There was a woman next to us who told her to calm down, stop talking, calm down, you're hysterical. So she repeated, I hit him. And a police officer asked her, said, you what? And she repeated it again, I hit him. And the officer then signaled for his sergeant to come down to the scene or down to where he was.
Karen's own words seemingly acknowledging guilt. McLaughlin's straightforward, confident delivery made her a compelling witness for the prosecution. Yet the defense saw something else in Katie McLaughlin, potential bias. It turned out Katie had more than a passing acquaintance with the people at 34 Fairview.
Did you tell anyone, Trooper Proctor, any investigator, anybody from the DA's office last year about your relationship with Caitlin Albert? Objection.
I'll allow that. No, only when there started to be a lot of harassment and things that, insinuations and stuff that started coming out online. I had said maybe once to them that I was concerned I was being harassed.
How was there harassment and insinuations if it hadn't been disclosed at the first proceeding?
Because it's out there everywhere on the internet and has been.
Before the first proceeding, Ms. McLaughlin, before you ever testified. That's my question. Do you understand my question?
It's been going on since before the first proceeding.
If you hadn't testified at the first proceeding, at which point it was revealed, how could you have ever suffered any harassment for it? At a hearing about a year ago, in the last year, May 3rd, 2024, about that relationship. Do you remember what your answer was?
No, not specifically.
You remember saying, in response to the question, who's Caitlin Albert? Asked by me?
I don't remember specifically what I said.
Did you say, I went to high school with someone named Caitlin Albert?
Have the page number in line, please.
May 3rd transcript, 10-24, lines 2 and 3. Mr. McLaughlin, that was not a full and accurate statement of your relationship with Caitlin Albert, correct?
I object.
Was that accurate?
I mean, that's a fact. That's okay. Next question.
You didn't offer up, you didn't say we're friends, did you?
We're not.
You didn't say that we are in the same friend group, did you?
No.
You didn't say we've been friends since high school.
No.
You said, I went to high school with someone named Caitlin Albert, correct?
Yes.
Almost as if you just saw her name in a yearbook.
No, I don't agree with that.
That's not true, is it? I mean, that wouldn't be true, correct? Because you did know Caitlin Albert.
That is true. And you asked me if I knew her, and I said yes. And you asked me if I'm friends with her, and I said I wouldn't say friends.
You wouldn't say friends?
Right.
Even as you sit here today, you would not say that you're friends with Caitlin Albert?
No.
You wouldn't say that you've been friends for years?
We've known each other for years.
That wasn't my question.
We've known each other for years, but we are not close friends. We don't have a relationship, just her one-on-one. It's just group settings.
You grew up in the same town together, correct?
We did.
Went to the same middle school together?
Correct.
Went to the same high school together?
Yes.
Socialized with her?
Yes.
You've taken day trips with her and others?
Yes.
You've taken beach trips with her and others?
Yes.
You've taken 4th of July weekend getaways with her and others?
I don't remember that, but...
One of your best friends named Michaela actually lived with Caitlin Albert at college, didn't she?
Yes.
And you visited your best friend at that residence where she lived with Caitlin Albert on more than one occasion, didn't you?
Yeah, occasionally I would go to visit the friends that I had there.
You would even spend the night in the apartment with her, correct?
Maybe a handful of times, yes.
You've taken photographs with Caitlin Albert, correct?
I'm in pictures with her, yes.
You've been to baby showers with Kate Manow over the years.
I have attended a baby shower with her, yes.
Celebrations with her over the years. Correct?
Yeah, we socialize, like I said, group settings, social events. I will see her.
The goal was to cast doubt on McLaughlin's credibility. If she wasn't fully candid about knowing the Alberts, could her recollection of Karen's statements be trusted? McLaughlin held firm that she heard exactly what she testified, but Jackson gave jurors plenty of reasons to wonder. To resolve the timeline mysteries, the prosecution turned to cold, hard data. Jessica Hyde, a digital forensics expert and professor, testified about the contentious Google search timing and smartphone records. On direct examination, Hyde broke down the technical details of Jennifer McCabe's phone.
I'm now going to ask you for your first opinion. So, you shared that you have an opinion about whether that timestamp 22740 was, whether or not that was the time the search how long to die in the cold occurred. Can you tell us to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty your opinion about whether that search, how long to die in the cold, occurred at 2:27:40 a.m. on January 29th, 2022?
There's no objection, Your Honor.
Okay, the objection's overruled.
What I can state to a scientific degree of certainty is that that search occurred at 6:24 a.m. and was the last search in the tab that had been opened at 2:27.
Would a suggestion or a claim that a user deleted irregularly a number of phone calls, would that be accurate or inaccurate in your experience?
It is inaccurate in this instance.
Can you explain to us why and how you came to that conclusion?
Yeah, this is actually really interesting because of what it appears in the forensics tools and additional artifacts that I looked at that are not parsed by the forensics tools. So the call logs, when you look at it, it appears, I don't remember if it's 8:57 or 8:59 a.m. in my mind at the moment, but approximately either 8:57 or 8:59 is the earliest phone call we see on the 29th of January. We see no call logs before, but we do see FaceTime logs before. So if an examiner, again, was making assumptions without testing or reviewing, the first assumption might be, well, things must have been deleted because there's data that exists before, but not current data.
Do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty whether there was any user deletions from the phone call log that morning?
Yes.
And what is that opinion?
The opinion is that I can see that it's done by the device itself utilizing unified logs, that the system is deleting the 201st call every time a new call is received or outgoing.
Defense attorney Bob Alessi's cross-examination of Hyde aimed to chip away at her impartiality and methodology.
On page 11, you list a 5:07:21 a.m. call to a Coco as outgoing, correct?
Correct.
Have you discussed that call with any member of the Commonwealth?
No.
And again, this call is at 5:07 a.m. on January 29th of 2022, correct?
That is correct.
There is no duration listed for that call. And if you just follow my questions, if you can, yes or no, is that correct? There's no duration yet listed.
Correct.
So what I want to do is to also note that that omission is not the only omission of durations from this report, or I'll state it differently, let me withdraw that. There is no population of the duration column for any call from 12:14:30 a.m. on January 29, 2022 all the way through this 5:07:21 call, and you don't start listing durations until 8:59:34 a.m. Is that correct?
Yes, and explainable. The artifact.
I understand
yes.
Mr.
Okay.
Brennan can
Sure.
handle those on his redirect.
Absolutely.
By the end of Hyde's turn on the stand, jurors had a clearer picture of the technical timeline, yet perhaps a fuzzier feeling about whom to trust. One of the most anticipated witnesses was Sergeant Yuri Buchanek, a Massachusetts State Police investigator who became the de facto stand-in for the embattled Trooper Proctor. Buchanek's testimony spanned 3 days, traversing a minefield of evidence collection details and departmental drama.
This report is authored by Trooper Michael Proctor.
Does that indicate, and I'm not going to ask you to go through the entirety of the report, but if you scan that report, does that indicate certain items of evidence that Trooper Proctor claimed to have recovered on his own? Pieces of plastic, small black plastic, clear plastic, fragment of glass on February 11th, 2022, 3 pieces of clear plastic on February 11th, 2022, clear and red plastic pieces on February 18th, 2022. Is all that referenced in there?
Those items are documented in this report as were collected, yes.
And those are all documented as having been collected by Trooper Proctor himself, correct?
Yes, they were.
Sir, you were notified on January 29th, 2022 that a Boston police officer was found gravely injured in front of 34 Fairview in the lawn, in the yard, correct?
No, that is not correct.
What were you notified of?
When the notification came in, it was that there was a male party found in the snowbank.
At some point, you learned that male party was John O'Keefe, a police officer, correct?
At some point, we did learn that he was a Boston police officer.
Matter of fact, you learned that morning. May not have been the first notification, but certainly early that morning, you knew that John O'Keefe was a Boston police officer.
At some point we learned, I don't remember exactly when, if it was morning, just after 12, I don't know when, but we did learn that he was a Boston police officer.
And I'm not asking about what Trooper Proctor learned, but what you learned. You learned that he was a Boston police officer, correct?
At some point I learned that he was a Boston police officer, yes.
And on January 29th, did you ever respond to 34 Fairview Road at any time?
On January 29th, 2022, at no point in time did I or Michael Proctor, who was with me the whole time, ever respond to 34 Fairview Road.
So the answer to my question, very simply, is no. Right?
That's correct.
At least your initial investigation during those early morning hours, those critical hours, led you to believe at least that there was a possibility that there was a physical altercation, correct?
Yes.
What steps did you take at that moment to determine whether or not anybody in the house may have been involved in that physical altercation that you thought was a possibility?
That's a compound question. I have to answer it separately.
Answer it however you want to. It's an open-ended question, which is unlike me. What steps did you take to, at that moment, to determine whether or not anybody in the house could have been involved in that possible physical altercation that you just described?
We interviewed the homeowner and 2 witnesses that were in that house.
You never went into the house, did you? On January 29th, at least.
I personally did not go in the house.
You did not secure that house or remove the occupants, did you?
Which day?
January 29th. I'm talking about the morning of January 29th.
I did not know.
You did not secure the yard as a crime scene, correct?
That's correct.
You didn't conduct any search of that house?
No, I did not.
You didn't take any photographs of the interior of that house?
I did not.
You didn't ask a forensic criminalist to join you and process the house, correct?
That is correct.
You didn't set up a crime scene log to determine who is coming in and going out of the potential crime scene?
I did not.
No one actually documented the crime scene by taking contextual photographs and then close-up photographs, etc., during those early morning hours, correct?
I cannot speak to that. I was not there.
So the answer is you didn't do that. And you didn't cause that to be done.
I did not do that.
However, the defense was far more interested in what Sergeant Buchanan uncovered about Trooper Proctor. In a highly charged cross-examination, Alan Jackson treated Buchanan less like a hostile witness and more like a whistleblower to be coaxed. Piece by piece, Jackson went after Proctor's handling of the case, using Buchanan's testimony as the lever.
You were Michael Proctor's supervisor?
Yes, I was.
When you work for the state police, you have a personal phone and a phone that is provided to you by the state police?
Yes.
The state police phone, is that a work phone?
Yes, it is.
What type of information do you receive on that phone?
You can receive communications via email, text message, cell phone tower, voice communications.
So I'm going to ask you to take a look at that document. And if you turn the page, does it begin to, one more page please, does it begin to reflect the email chain?
Yes, it does.
Do you remember this email chain?
I remember seeing it when I reviewed it. I don't remember the intricate details of these messages.
Do you remember that photograph?
I don't.
Okay, can you turn the page? Is there text?
Yes, there is.
Without citing the phone numbers, I'd like you to cite the author of the text, and I'd like you to read the text to the jury.
So in the beginning, it says, "Funny, I am going through his retarded client's phone."
Is that your comment?
No, it is not.
Okay, next.
It appears to be the same person because of the way that the extraction happens, and it says no nudes so far. Again, I believe it's the same person because all of these are identified as sent. It says, "I hate that man. I truly hate him."
Do you have any belief that's Michael Proctor who was writing these?
Yes, I believe that is.
Jackson pointedly asked Buchanan if Proctor's involvement tainted the investigation. The sergeant loyally answered, "No, not at all. The investigation was done with honor and integrity." But even he had to admit the optics were bad. After weeks of witness recollections and dueling narratives, the prosecution ended its case with a blast of high-tech theatrics. Dr. Judson Welcher, a biomechanical engineer and accident reconstruction expert, took the stand armed with laser scans, 3D models, and even a life-sized Lexus SUV experiment. If the trial were a movie, Welcher's testimony was the CGI action sequence designed to visually demonstrate exactly how John O'Keefe could have been struck by Karen's backing vehicle.
One of the things we first did was to get an exemplar Lexus. What does exemplar mean? It just means I got the same exact year, make, and model vehicle as Miss Reed. So Miss Reed's vehicle is on the left-hand side, taken during my inspection, and then I found this exact same year, make, model, manufactured at the same plant, everything Lexus in Texas. So even though it looks like a European plate, it's a Texas plate. Purchased the vehicle, had it shipped out to California.
Using his dual expertise in crashes and human injury, Dr. Welcher led jurors step by step through his investigative process. He explained that he purchased an identical 2021 Lexus SUV, the exact model driven by Karen just for this analysis, and meticulously examined every detail. The dent patterns on Karen's SUV, the geometry of the Albert front yard, the autopsy photos of John's injuries. He even compiled a 141-page PowerPoint of findings. In one gripping demonstration, Welcher showed the jury a video of himself dressed in similar clothing to John O'Keefe, with blue grease paint smeared on the Lexus's rear taillight.
So this is me. I'm actually 6 feet, half an inch tall. What you see in the upper right is the coroner's examination report for Mr. O'Keefe. He's 73 inches tall. That's 6 feet 1 inch tall. At this time, I was 220 pounds. Mr. O'Keefe, at the time of this incident, was 216 pounds. So I took measurements of myself. I'm actually wearing the same make and size shoes as Mr. O'Keefe, the same brand of jeans as Mr. O'Keefe, the same brand and size shirt of Mr. O'Keefe. You see the Lexus in the background. We have matched the height to the Lexus. What I'm showing here is both my height, and then keep in mind where the height of this wing is relative to my right eye. I then set about to do a little bit of testing with the Lexus. The first test you're going to see is me just walking backwards, or actually sideways, into the Lexus. What I've done is I've painted the Lexus right rear tail light with what's called grease paint, and sort of like paint, but it doesn't dry. And then I have backed up sideways, side shuffled into the Lexus with my arm out, see what the damage pattern looks like, or basically where someone of Mr. O'Keefe's height's arm would contact the rear tail light. So then what you see is I've shown the photographs again. I show the paint transfer onto my arm. The yellow grease paint on my hand was to show where my hand would hit the tail light. And so just kind of me walking slowly sideways into it, the approximate location of the tail light, and I'll line it up with the broken tail light in a second, lines up with the approximate location of the lacerations on Mr. O'Keefe's arm.
Welcher had spent 3 days testifying. Now it was Alessi's turn to probe for weaknesses in the expert's exhaustive analysis. The cross-examination that followed was equal parts technical grilling and theatrical sparring, at one point even invoking the possibility of a Lexus launching into outer space.
Isn't it true that if Mr. O'Keefe's arm were to be flexed like it was with the test subject in your blue paint test, the lacerations on Mr. O'Keefe's forearm would be oriented in a vertical direction?
Absolutely not. If you pull up my slide 117, it'll show exactly that it is like perfectly horizontal. When you're standing like this, and this is the tail light, the laceration, when it comes across here and pushes my body, it's going to make a horizontal laceration because the 6,000-pound vehicle is going to push me out of the way. As this pushes me out of the way, it's going to drag and create a horizontal laceration across my arm. This is exactly what you'd expect.
So let's talk about the forearm, sir. We may have miscommunicated. I'm talking about the lacerations on Mr. O'Keefe's forearm now.
So we're switching from the arm to the forearm.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Wouldn't those be oriented in a vertical direction?
No. Again, you have the vehicle, if this is me and this is the car, it's pushing and pushing across like this. And with your arm bent like this, it's going to cause laceration as it pushes my arm away. It pushes like that.
Okay, I got it.
My slide shows this quite clearly.
So you disagree, you do not agree that the injuries to Mr. O'Keefe's forearm under your theory would be oriented in a vertical. You disagree with that. Just want to get that on the record.
I disagree with
that. Okay.
Then came the money. Alessi pointed out that Welcher's firm had originally agreed to a modest $44,500 contract with the DA's office, but that ballooned to $325,000 as the case progressed.
Your firm and you were retained for this case by the Commonwealth 2.5 years after the incident in question. You were retained, your firm, on September 23rd, 2024. Is that correct, sir?
No, I believe we were retained a couple days before that.
A couple days. Okay.
Right.
So,
actually, I might be able to find out if you'd like me to look at the document.
It's not all that important. You would say it's within a week of September 23rd, 2000? It was in September of 2024?
I believe it was in September, yes.
Right.
I would
So-
want to double check.
That's 2.5 years from the date of the incident in question, if I did the math right, correct?
Oh, I never thought about it. Yeah, approximately.
And as we just discussed, and you stated on your direct examination, you have no dog in this fight, correct?
Correct.
On November 5th of 2024, your firm Aperture was paid $44,500 by the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office to conduct work that was at least similar to the work of Trooper Paul, correct?
I have no idea. I don't get the billing or the statements.
Do you recall whether Aperture do you believe Aperture is working for free in this matter?
Oh, no, I don't believe that.
So
we're an engineering company. We bill for our time.
So you know that Aperture is getting paid for its work in this case, correct?
We are billing for our analysis work.
Well, you're not just billing, you're billing and getting paid, correct?
So I have not seen any of the payments. I would assume that we're getting paid, but I don't know that.
Sir, you are a senior vice president of Aperture, are you not?
I am.
You would know, wouldn't you, if your firm was not getting paid for work since September 23rd of 2024, wouldn't you?
No, probably not. Usually it takes, 9, 10, 12 months of not getting paid before the accounting department reaches out to me.
Exactly. So you've been on this for 2.5 years. So if it would take 9 months or 12 months, if you weren't getting paid, you would have been notified by that by now, correct? According to your own answer you just gave.
I've not been on this case for 2.5 years.
I'm sorry, sir. Let me go back to the question of payment.
Hold on. You said I've been on this case for 2.5 years. I was retained in September 17th-ish of 2024. So that's, less than a year ago.
Understood. I'm moving on to the next question because I want to move away from that discussion and just go right to the billing. You, as you sit here today, do not have a recollection of whether Aperture has been paid. Is that your testimony?
It has nothing to do with recollection. I'm not part of that process. We have an accounting department. I don't have any involvement in that.
So is your testimony you have no knowledge about any contractual relationship between Aperture and the Commonwealth?
Oh, no. I was sent a contract by the Commonwealth to sign, so I'm aware of the contractual agreement, but the day-to-day or month-to-month invoicing and billing, I'm not involved in that.
Okay. So you're aware there's a contract between Aperture and the Commonwealth.
I signed it.
And you signed it. And wasn't that contract obligating the Commonwealth to pay for the services of Aperture? Isn't that the purpose of the contract, in part?
In part, sure.
Yeah. It's a legal obligation of the Commonwealth. Your firm does work, and the Commonwealth pays for it, correct?
That's the idea.
Right. And so you know about that contract because you signed it.
Correct.
Also, you testified on direct that there was a purchase of a Lexus exemplar for your testing.
Correct.
Who pays for that Lexus exemplar?
Aperture.
And is that then cost passed on to the Commonwealth?
No.
So you pay for the Lexus, you don't pass that cost on, correct?
So what we're doing is we paid for the Lexus, we're keeping it till the trial's over, we're selling it, and charging the Commonwealth the difference in the price.
Exactly. That was where I was going, sir.
But they're only paying the difference. And in theory, if we sell it for more in California, then we'll reduce the bill.
Okay, I don't want to speculate. I just wanted to see what the obligation was.
So the obligation is the difference.
Exactly. So the obligation is the difference. Are you aware that on April 5th, 2025, the Norfolk County District Attorney's Office amended your contract? Are you aware of that, sir?
I am.
And isn't it the case that that amendment authorized the amount of $325,000 to be paid to Aperture? Isn't that what that amendment contract states?
I believe that's correct.
So the Commonwealth is obligated to pay at least $325,000, and is that correct?
That is you're asking me a legal opinion now about a contract. That is my understanding of how contracts work, but I'm certainly not an attorney.
And on top of that, are you aware that Aperture has been already paid $44,510 for its work? Are you aware of that?
The second time you asked me, no. I'm not aware of anything we've been paid.
The subtext to jurors was clear. This expert is extremely well paid by the state. Why didn't the state police's own reconstruction unit handle this case? In fact, the first trial featured a state trooper's reconstruction that didn't go nearly as far as Welcher's analysis, perhaps prompting the DA to seek outside help for retrial. But Alessi's skeptical questions may have lingered in jurors' minds as they looked at the polished expert with a $300,000 presentation. With the prosecution's case concluded, the defense began presenting their own witnesses to cast doubt on the prosecutor's narrative. While fewer in number, each defense witness aimed a spotlight at a different crack in the state's case, from contaminated evidence to alternate injury causes to outright conspiracy. When former Canton police officer Kelly Dever stepped into the witness box, the defense expected a first-hand critique of shady evidence control at the crime scene. What the jury got instead was an uneasy tug-of-war over a single, now wobbly memory. In a 2023 FBI interview, Kelly had claimed she saw ATF agent Brian Higgins and then Chief Kenneth Berkowitz loitering by Karen Reed's Lexus in the Canton PD garage for a wildly long time.
Officer Dever, did you go on to say in that interview, quote, you never saw them leave, them being Brian Higgins and Chief Ken Berkowitz. You never saw them leave, but you recalled thinking to yourself that they were in the Sallyport for a wildly long time together in there, end quote. Did you say that?
That was my recollection of the time.
Okay.
So yes.
After being shown the evidence that you left that day, January 29, 2022 at 3:45, and learning that the defendant's car did not get to the Sallyport at 5:30 or so p.m., is there any way you could have seen Mr. Berkowitz and Mr. Higgins in the Sallyport with the defendant's car that night before you left for work?
There is no way.
In cross-examination, Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan took the opening Kelly had given him and pressed hard. He walked her through the timeline minute by minute, driving home how her old statement collapsed under simple math. More explosive was her claim that a member of Reed's defense team later warned she could face perjury charges if she didn't stick to the Higgins by the SUV narrative.
When you told the defense you had made a mistake about your memory, did they pressure you?
Yes.
Did they pressure you to say something other than the truth?
Yes, they wanted me to repeat a lie at that point, given it would have been with malicious intent to repeat it.
Whatever contamination the defense hoped she would describe, Kelly wasn't offering it. The anticipated scene contamination narrative expected by the defense fizzled, leaving the defense scrambling to find another witness who could back up their claims of improper evidence handling. The defense then called a witness identified as a friend of Michael Proctor, whose testimony added a jaw-dropping entry into the trial's growing list of shady text messages. This individual, appearing nervous but resolute, recounted a text exchange with Proctor in the early weeks of the investigation.
What does he say?
John O'Keefe.
What is the next question from somebody in the group?
How old?
And what does Mr. Proctor respond?
He took custody of his sister's kids.
The next one?
She died of cancer and the father overdosed on her grave.
And then one of the group sends a message. What do they say?
Oh man, that's rough.
And what's Mr. Proctor's response?
Mid-40s.
Does somebody in the group then post a Facebook posting?
Yes.
Do you know what that's about?
I do not.
Turn the page, please.
the first line from Bird, and I'll note this is January 29, 2022 at 10:56:39 p.m. Did I read that accurately?
Yes.
And what does the person say?
I'm sure the owner of the house will receive some shit.
And could you read Mr. Proctor's 2 responses?
Nope. Homeowner is a Boston cop too.
So you could turn to the next page, ending on 33. This is January 29, 2022 at 10:57:21 p.m. Could you read Mr. Proctor's 2 comments?
She waffled him. I looked at his body at the hospital.
And one of the group asks a question.
She waffled him, in quotation marks.
And how does he respond?
He was banged up.
Somebody in the group asks another question. What do they ask?
I thought he was drunk. Did he get beat up?
And Mr. Proctor's response?
Nope.
Turn to the next page, ending in 34. This is at around 10:58:06 p.m., running through 10:59 p.m. Another question from the group. What did they ask?
So the owner of the house was a woman cop that beat him?
And Mr. Proctor's 2 responses?
That's what I initially thought after talking to Canton paramedic. Then I saw the guy.
And then asks, what's the story? Does Mr. Proctor return?
He does.
What does he say?
She hit him with her car.
Turn to the next page, please, ending in 35. And these texts are from 10:59:13 p.m. to 11:08 p.m. The person by the name of Bird asks a question. What does he ask? What does he say?
Okay, that's fucked up.
How does Mr. Proctor respond?
Intentional or not?
And somebody in the group again?
Gotcha, he was frozen in the driveway and she didn't see him.
And Mr. Proctor's 2 responses?
That's another animal we won't be able to prove.
There's a comment from one person in the group, number ending in 5051. Could you read that?
But I assume you guys are out to make it cut and dry since it involves cops?
Next comment by Bird.
Something stinks.
And the comment by Mr. Proctor.
Yeah, but there will be some serious charges brought on the girl.
And the beginning of the next sentence is gotta be. And finally, the last comment on that page.
She hot at least.
And that's a question mark.
Yes.
Turn the page, please. Ending in 38. These messages begin at 11:05:57 p.m., run through 11:06:39 p.m. on January 29, 2022. Does it begin with comments from Mr. Proctor?
It does.
Could you read all of them, please?
These are not my words. I'm not really comfortable reading these. Do I have to say these words out loud?
So I'm going to see you at sidebar.
On January 29, 2022, 11 p.m., 5 minutes, 57 seconds. And this page ends at 11 p.m., 6 minutes, 39 seconds on January 29, 2022, ending in numbers 38. Did I read that correctly?
Yes.
Mr. Proctor says, from all accounts, he didn't do a thing wrong. She's a whack job, and then uses the C word to describe. Is that accurate?
That's accurate.
He then says, yeah, she's a babe. Weird Fall River accent, though. No ass. Are those the words that he wrote?
Those are the words.
And there's a response at the bottom from one member in the group stating, oh, she's skating.
Yes.
Let's turn the page, ending in 39. These begin in January 29, 2022, 11:06 p.m., 55 seconds. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is.
Mr. Proctor responds, 0 chance she skated. She's effed. She's fucked.
Yes.
Is that what he said?
It is.
And then one person in the group says, no ass bitch. Accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate.
Mr. Proctor, there's a response, laughed at, quote, no ass bitch.
Yes.
This painted a disturbing picture of the lead investigator's mindset. Jurors could easily conclude that Detective Proctor wanted Karen Reed to be guilty and perhaps acted on that bias. Finally, the defense introduced Dr. Marie Russell, the much-anticipated canine bite expert. On direct examination, Dr. Russell presented herself as an independent scholar who dove into veterinary forensics literature about dog bites and claw marks. The defense had her walk the jury through John O'Keefe's autopsy photos, focusing on the notable injuries.
It is a picture of the decedent's right arm and forearm.
Now, without stating what it is, have you been able to form an opinion as to the source and nature of the wounds that are depicted in that exhibit?
Yes.
And what is your opinion and conclusion concerning those injuries?
Those wounds were inflicted as the result of a dog attack.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Can you speak a little louder?
They were inflicted as the result of a dog attack.
And how did you form that opinion? Just describe your thought process to the jury.
Well, there are multiple groupings of wounds.
Do you have the pointer?
I do.
And if you could use the screen that Her Honor has requested.
So there are multiple groupings of wounds right here. Here's one on the what I'll consider the upper arm, which is above the elbow. Here's another grouping. Here's an interesting, complex grouping at the elbow. These are all at the posterior surface of the arm. And there's another grouping down here on the forearm. These multiple groupings are patterns. And they are, in my opinion, were inflicted by the teeth and claws of a dog.
Special Prosecutor Hank Brennan began his cross-examination of Dr. Marie Russell with barely concealed skepticism. Brennan's first target was Russell's experience.
I believe I am an expert in dog bites, yes.
But after this case, and after you took the photograph in this case, and after you created this advertising, you then added the fact that you were an expert in dog bites, didn't you?
It was all at the same time, and it was submitted at the same time.
Right. After this case, after you participated and volunteered to involve yourself in this case, you then used it as a marketing opportunity, didn't you?
Well, I had retired from my full-time job, and I had time, and I wanted to get more involved in some forensic legal cases, and not specifically dog bite cases. I have much more experience with other cases.
Undoubtedly, I respect that, but simply after you testified in this case, you did use your participation as a way to try to garner future interest in cases and income, didn't you?
I did, but I did not mention this case.
Have you testified in any other court since this case as a dog bite expert?
No.
Finally, in a bit of courtroom drama, Brennan approached with a series of large, glossy photos, close-ups of John's injuries, alongside high-resolution images of Chloe the dog's teeth and claws. One by one, he asked Russell if she could definitively match any wound to a specific tooth or claw.
When you testified on June 18th of 2024, last year, when you came in and you were asked questions before the actual hearing, you were asked questions about this particular superficial abrasion, weren't you? Are you saying that nails of a dog are so similar to the teeth that you can't tell the difference between them when you're looking at a wound?
I'm saying that they can cause similar looking abrasions.
Are you able, as the premier expert in the United States on dog bites, able to tell the difference between teeth and claw nails of an animal when you're looking at a wound?
Individually, okay, that's a very interesting question. Sometimes it's difficult because they can have similar appearing wounds. So you have to look at the overall pattern in order to make some conclusions.
Well, when you first started testifying in this case, you never suggested you had to look at everything in totality. You were giving opinions regarding individual wounds. Isn't that fair to say?
No.
It wasn't until I began asking you questions and you had inconsistent answers that you've now changed from, rather than identifying individual wounds, now you're saying I can't identify individual wounds, but I can tell you in totality.
I disagree with that. I believe that the very first time I testified, I mentioned that the overall pattern was important.
When you first testified, so today, before we get to your testimony, you're saying this could be either teeth or nails, but you think it's probably teeth.
Correct.
How probable? Do you think it's certainly teeth, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty? You're not sure? What is the value of your certainty or lack of certainty about what caused this wound?
Reasonable degree of medical certainty.
What is a reasonable degree of medical certainty? That what?
That those are caused by teeth.
Teeth. Okay. When you first testified, your position was it could have been teeth or nails. That is different than saying, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, teeth, isn't it?
Brennan also drew attention to what Dr. Russell had heard, or not heard, during the first trial. On cross, he cleverly slipped in the revelation that John O'Keefe's clothes were indeed tested for dog DNA in the first trial, and none was found. An objection by the defense led to a sidebar, but the damage was done. The jury heard it. This actually caused a sudden legal skirmish. During a break, the defense exploded with a motion for a mistrial, accusing Brennan of violating a pretrial agreement by mentioning DNA evidence the state hadn't introduced formally. The jury was ushered out as arguments began. Alessi emphatically argued that Brennan's DNA question was an ambush, prejudicing the jury by implying no dog DNA was found, something the defense couldn't readily rebut since no DNA expert testified in this retrial. You could hear a pin drop as Judge Cannone deliberated. Ultimately, after a tense recess, she denied the motion for a mistrial, ruling that the prosecution's question, while pushing the envelope, didn't irrevocably harm the defense's case. She decided that Brennan could mention the absence of dog DNA, since Dr. Russell was aware of it from pretrial hearings, but nothing more about any DNA expert opinions from the first trial. Through the ups and downs of testimony, the jury's mood became an undertone of its own. These 12 men and women, plus alternates, have been sitting through weeks of convoluted evidence, and by mid-trial, it showed. Judge Cannone took pains to keep them fresh, even ending court early some days to accommodate a juror's personal appointment, or simply to avoid fatigue. She periodically reminded them not to discuss the case with anyone or consume media. Given the case's widespread presence online, that was no small request. In fact, the specter of social media looms large. This trial has unfolded in the glare of TikTok, YouTube, and Reddit discussions, where every day's testimony is being dissected by true crime aficionados. Do you think it's possible for the jurors to not view social media or talk about such a high-profile case to friends or family? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Outside the Norfolk County Courthouse, a growing crowd of protesters made their presence known, often wearing pink scarves or hats, a symbol of the Justice for Karen movement that had sprung up. As the retrial races toward conclusion, courtroom regulars and legal pundits are speculating on the possible endgames. The jury would soon have Karen Reed's fate in their hands. Again, would this second round deliver closure or simply deepen the mystery? Whichever way it goes, the implications for the district attorney's office are profound. On a broader scale, the case's outcome could influence how future cases involving police associates are handled, perhaps with more outside oversight to avoid the appearance of hometown favoritism. As the jury prepares to deliberate, one thing is clear: the stakes transcend Karen Reed. The Karen Reed case has been nothing short of a legal roller coaster, and it's understandable if you have strong feelings or lingering questions. What do you think the outcome of the retrial would be? We invite you to join the conversation. Drop a comment below with your theories, reactions, or perspectives on the evidence presented in the retrial. If you missed the recap of the first trial, be sure to check out Part 1, where we detailed the case background and the explosive first trial that ended in a hung jury. It provides essential context on how we got to this point. You can find part 1 here for a full recap. Stay tuned and subscribe to the channel because you won't want to miss the moment the jury's decision is announced, or our post-verdict breakdown. So subscribe and turn on notifications so you're alerted. This trial may be nearing its end, but the broader quest for justice in the Karen Reed case is far from over. Whether this chapter closes with accountability or more uncertainty, we'll be here to unpack it, shine light on the truth, and continue asking the tough questions. Thank you for watching.